Greetings and welcome back to the channel. It's raining like a mofo out today, so I can't leave. Can't leave the apartment, which kind of sucks. And I could, but I don't feel like walking around in the rain with my umbrella. Anyway, I thought it might be fun to go over some of my favorite jazz socials, be they on Instagram or on YouTube. There's much more happening on Instagram than there is on YouTube. But on YouTube, the things that are available are pretty damn well done. Starting with Andy Edwards. Andy covers both jazz and prog rock. He is from England, and his opinions sort of have a British slant to my way of thinking. I believe he's an instructor. He has a lot of knowledge, very well presented, very down to earth. Looks like he's in front of his record rack, sort of like I am to a degree. But in keeping that he's British, he does some things that I find wrong. I don't mean wrong, but things I don't agree with. He did a top 10 greatest jazz records of all time, and I agreed with most of them on there. But bone in contention, I really don't think Dave Brubeck Take 5 is one of the greatest jazz records of all time. You know, that's a really or the album called Time Out? I think it is, and the famous track is Take 5. When that track was famous and was winning accolades and all that, it was appealing primarily to a white college audience. There was a show in America in the early 60s, maybe late 50s, called Dobie Gillis. And Dobie was this kid with a sweater in college and all the usual nonsense about why can't he find the love of his life and all that. But his best friend was Maynard G. Krebs, who represented the beatnik of on the show. The beatnik at that time being Jack Kerouac and the type here in Greenwich Village, William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg. So he was the hep, cool cat. You know, as commercialism goes, you have to present commercial things. But Dobie Gillis would have definitely gone for Time Out. And I know it's really catchy, but on the wide pantheon of great records, if you've got, you know, Charles Mingus and Duke Ellington and John Coltrane and Miles Davis, you know, and Earl Hines and Wayne Shorter, you know, Dave Brubeck is the odd man out. But beyond that, Murray does a really great job, and it's really educational. Andy Edwards. And then we have WCB Jazz Vinyl Collector. He also does a great job. His videos look really good, very well presented. He researches his videos much more than I do. I just kind of talk off the top of my head, which is why I get things wrong. But he like he just did a 75th anniversary, rather the Atlantic coming out party over at Acoustic Sounds, where they're going to do like 10 Atlantic titles at 45 RPM. I actually think some of those are really cool. I have most everything I want here, but I'd be really curious to hear Giant Steps by John Coltrane on 45 RPM. Has anyone else done that? I don't think so. But beyond that, on YouTube, there's really not that much of people talking about consistently discussing jazz records. Am I wrong? On YouTube? I mean, you'll get one-offs, people saying, the 10 greatest Blue Notes in my collection. But you'll get that dude from Arizona. Don't get me started on that roaring flatulence. But there just really isn't that much of people doing consistently. Of course, Dan the Jazz Shepherd, who's controversial from time to time, but good as far as I'm concerned. If we all agree with each other, what good is that? Things get a little more dense and informative on a consistent daily basis at Instagram. Now, obviously, it's much easier to just take a photo of a record and do a reel and add some music on Instagram than it is to produce a video like I'm doing here. These things require some work, kids. But there's tons of stuff out there. And I also wanted to mention, because it is overdue in shipping, I want to do a video on this new book that's coming out called Tokyo Jazz Joints. Now, I have Jazz Kisa 2014 through 2019. This is about the whole Tokyo jazz scene and all around Japan, I think, of little bars playing jazz music, often on amplifiers that are maybe single-ended with horn speakers. I think the horn speakers may be more ubiquitous than the single-ended triout amplifiers. But I was talking to somebody who's done this. In Japan, you go into these bars and you listen to jazz and you do not talk. And I just think that's incredible. And that's the next place I want to go, is Tokyo. But this book, Jazz Kisa 2015 through 2019, is also 2014 version by Katsumasa Kusonose. He's a photographer, and he does a really beautiful job. I mean, I just have to lust over this stuff. I want to go in the worst way. And even though they say the jazz kisses are in decline in Japan, geez, you wouldn't know it by all the articles. I talked about them briefly in a Museum of Preamp review I did. And these books, and now Tokyo Jazz Joints, which is a couple guys who live in Japan. They're not Japanese, but this is something I'm really excited about, coverage of this whole thing, and I really, really want to go. The Japanese are to be praised and respected and revered for their love of jazz music. Ever since the 50s, they're the first to do any significant jazz vinyl reissues, which were highly prized when they came out from Toshiba or EMI or King back in the day. But now we have a plethora of, very well done reissues from all the usual subjects. So the Japanese pressings have sort of fallen in favor, but they still do an amazing job of reproduction in both covers and in vinyl. I know Rich Capeless is a huge fan of Japanese pressings and vinyl because they're easy, not easy, but they're often in beautiful condition because they've been treated well, because the Japanese do that. Rich Capeless, DG Mono, he doesn't really do, I think he may have a YouTube channel. I should know this. I interviewed the guy a couple times. But if you look up DG Mono, Rich does great in-depth research. He buys only mint pressings, which I don't do. He also has the RBG Legacy site, where you can take a virtual tour of Rudy Van Gelder's studio, either Hackensack or Englewood Cliffs. Amazing work there. But let's get into some of these Instagram sites. Do you call them sites, pages, joints, jukes? I don't know. But perhaps number one is Sid Schwartz at Jazz and Coffee. I've known Sid for a long time, baby. I actually have known Sid for a long time. I didn't realize he was Jazz and Coffee. Back in the day, when Sony Legacy would release a lot of jazz reissues, mostly Miles stuff, along with Tom Corley and Randy Haker, Sid Schwartz worked for Sony. And then he joined my Jazz Vinyl Lovers group and would do these long, really informative posts about certain records. Well, now he does that at Jazz and Coffee. He doesn't write about just jazz, but I think that's his main thing. So Jazz and Coffee, that's one of the first places I would stop on Instagram. Now, a lot of people just put up the favorite records they're listening to. And there are many, many pages that do that. One of them being Zeke's Jazz Records. A cursory look here at Zeke's page. He has photos of Giant Step, a Kenny Dorham record, the first John Coltrane record, Bill Evans' Portraits in Jazz, a Kenny Burrell record, Elvin Jones, and he's very, very consistent and talks a little bit about each record. Next up, Lekojazz, L-E-K-O Jazz, the Instagram page of one Leo Kornel-Inchen-Lipper. I can't pronounce his last name, but he primarily posts historic photographs of everybody you can imagine. Dizzy Gillespie, Miles, Nancy Wilson, Monk, George Gershwin. So he finds really beautiful archival level photographs, and he has some commentary. So that's a fun place to go. Then we have Audio Grail. Audio Grail has a huge following. It goes without saying that Jazz and Coffee has a huge following. Audio Grail has a huge following. Now he primarily, I don't know who this is at Audio Grail, but he primarily puts a record behind his Garrard, I think it's a 901 turntable, very beautiful presentation, and plays some music for you. Reggae here. Wide range of recordings, many different things, but primarily jazz. Great Sasha Distel and John Lewis record. He doesn't really write a lot, but it's a beautiful presentation. Presentation is so much of this. I live in a crazy cramped apartment, so it's hard to present things really beautifully. I do my best. And there is a Instagram page for the guys behind Tokyo Jazz Joints. There's their Instagram page. No music, just
Oh, right. Wow, and my battery's still rocking. Podcasting heaven, yes.
They also have a podcast, but honestly, I think their podcast kind of stinks. You know, when I go on a podcast, And this goes for a lot of podcasts. So many podcasts, you know, I'm working, I'm drinking coffee. I want to get down to business. I want some real information. I don't really give a shit about what you did this past weekend, or if you've got jock itch, or if you and the kids were up on the mountains. I want to hear about the main, let's get down to the Tokyo jazz joints. Let's hear about the sustenance of why I came here in the first place. And that is sorely lacking. There are so many podcasts, and so many just suck. You know, there's Jazz Bastard. It's okay, you know. I don't know. It's hard to really get a great thing happening. But in saying that, I cannot wait to get this book, because I crave information about the whole Tokyo jazz kisa scene. I'm excited about that. So Tokyo Jazz Joints, there's another one. Jazz in Britain, the record label, they have a website. They've done Instagram page. They have done some really cool releases. I mean, consecutively well done. Where is it? That's their page. Jazz in Britain are also a record label, and as I said, they've done so many different releases, and they talk about different things on their page. And the cool thing about doing this is when you find one, you always find another one. Here's one I've never been to. Jazz in Print. They have 5,000 followers. Good Lord. Pretty cool. Photo of Bud Powell. So this appears to be quotes. They draft quotes with photos, which is pretty cool. I think that's terrific. That's Jazz in Print. Then we have FW, Rare Jazz Vinyl Collector, and he primarily posts Frederick, that is. He's based in Stockholm, Sweden. He posts photos of records that are probably considered rare in his collection. No music, but nicely shot photos of his collection. He has some great stuff in his collection. Ted Curson, Mal Waldron, Cecil Taylor, Joe Henderson. A lot of really cool stuff. So there's another one. FW Rare Jazz Vinyl. And here's one by a female. We don't see many women, you know, collecting jazz records in general, but Catherine Deschennes, based in Quebec, Canada. Her site is called Cath_lapatate. And she posts a lot of cool records that are primarily jazz, but not only jazz. Cannonball. It's funny to see a Descendants record next to a Cannonball Adderley record. You don't see that every day, not even in a record store. Here's another guy who posts really interesting covers. Jordan Stagram. Jordan Stagram. Does he have music? Oh, yes. Summary. So he posts music. You know, it's easy to post music, and you can, you know, hit people to stuff they may not know about it, particularly if you're new to the collecting scene. So that's a cool one. And then JE2A3, JE Labs. Now, this is primarily gear stuff, but, you know, he posts the kind of stuff I like to see, gear-wise, single-ended triode amps. He gets into old analog cameras. I don't know what kind of turntable that is, but it's beautiful. Look at that. Wow. So he always just posts interesting stuff. JE2A3. Wow. General Electric A1 400 12-inch coaxial speaker. Isn't that crazy? So that's a great one. Mdflavin, who I check in with about every day. Mdflavin posts tubes, records, watches. You know, he's just obviously a cultured individual. Kind of reminds me of John DeVore a little bit. Who, you know, John DeVore Makes Devore Fidelity speakers. I just reviewed the O Babies here, and I've had all his speakers just about. John also has a Facebook group called Watch. He has a Facebook group called The Hood, where we all post photos of cars that freak us out. You know, he's another guy like that. John Devore is an illustrator, brilliant thinker, and there are a few guys like that out there in the world. In fact, looks like Mdflavin also owns the 096. So that's cool. It's fun. The Stereo Steve, pure hardcore jazz record collector. The Stereo Steve, also a man with a beautiful Garrard turntable, I think with an Ortofon tone arm. There's a great copy of a Horace Silver record, and I believe, like me, he prefers original pressings, even though Sam did a really great reissue of that Clark Terry record. That's a great, fun Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Buddy Tate record. Motor City Scene, that's been reissued, but that's a really cool, fun record. So the Stereo Steve does good work. The Vinyl Teardrop, I believe the Vinyl Teardrop, his name is Stephen Hines. And Stephen posts a lot of different things. What is this? Upstairs at Eric's. He posts some baseball stuff. He posts a wide array of jazz records. You know, Instagram is just a great place to learn if you're new to jazz, just to see what's available and to see what people are passionate about. That's, you know, and that's what this is really all about. To take the time to do this is passion, because there's just a small amount of us out here. My buddy Victor Soldano at Victor Soldano Foto, who does jazz stuff. He also does the occasional CD, but he's also into gear. And this is often how I feel in the middle of the day. Thank you, Victor. This is an interesting one. Dirty Harry Jazz Barcelona, Enrique Blanquier. My jazz record and CD collection, secondhand and new, modern jazz, bop, cool, jazz soul, and some free Latin soul, funk, and metal. A lot of the usual subjects, but cool stuff. It's nice to see people from other countries posting their records. You know, Jazz Vinyl Lovers, my Facebook group, that's the great, to me that's the best thing about the group, is when people in other parts of the world post their jazz records you will just never ever see ever again. Just bizarre pressings from bizarre countries. What's funny is we don't have anybody really from Japan on Jazz Vinyl Lovers. I don't really understand that, but we've got them from everywhere else. James Moody. That's really nice. What else we got here? Je t'aime. I want to lick your knees. Je t'aime. And you know, I will be demonetized for this. Then there's even a site or a page, thank God, ECM Vinyl Collector, all ECM Vinyl Collector, posted by one Chris. And I have all these records. I love ECM records. You know, I love the sound of ECM records. Some people just hate it. I don't know why. To me, it's beautiful, and it reminds me of Norway, even though I think it's a German label. That kind of windswept, like Terry Ripdahl are some of my favorite ECM records. I think I have them all. And some of them, like To Be Continued. Man, it's like you're floating up in the clouds. It's just really atmospheric music. I really love it. Oh, I can't forget, of course, Bob B.A. and Blue Note Vinyl Spinners. Bob started out in Jazz Vinyl Lovers back in 1972. Actually, he was part of Jazz Vinyl Lovers. Then he formed his own group, also on Facebook, called Blue Note Vinyl Spinners, which is, I think, around 10,000. Jazz Vinyl Lovers is around 12,000. You know, whatever, who cares really? And Bob is a really, Bill B.A. is a really upbeat person. You need people who are upbeat in your life to get you through the really bad times. I think I mentioned that at the Jazz Record Center, Fred Cohen's 36-year-old son died in a mosh pit accident. You can't make this shit up. And Bill had lost his daughter a few years ago, so he sent me a few links to give to Fred about grief counseling, and Fred was very appreciative. So that's really the great thing about our community. It's a community, and people look out for each other and care about each other and share their passions for jazz. This is another page that, you know, I used the word who posts covers, but he posts some really unusual covers. Zjazz_TV. jazz vinyl enthusiast in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I just think he posts some unusual stuff. Shemek Farah and Sonell Smith, I don't know this at all. Sahib Shihab, Dexter Gordon. Now he's posting unusual things that you don't see every day, and that's what I like to see. Charles Moffat, The Gift. Charles Moffat, who played bass with Ornette Coleman, and whose son was a prominent jazz drummer. When Destiny Calls, the music of Billy Galt. Now this is a cool page. Zjazz _TX. This is wild. Roscoe Shelton Sings. What is that? Compass Rises. You know, there was a period when, it was easy to get record pressed, and they were practically homemade. Walk, the Lafayette Afro Rock Band. I've heard of them. They did a reissue a little while ago. So he posts some really unusual things. Marty Paik Art Pepper Quartet on Tampa. So that's a really cool page. Then we have a person who goes by the name of Nick. His Instagram handle is Vvain _Melter. Vvain Melter. Huh, I never got that before. But he makes some really great little videos. He takes full advantage. This is not one of them. These are pretty straightforward. But I've seen him do some really wild... Oh, here's a cool one. So that's cool. There's a cover, a photo of the storefront of Sam Records. I guess that's in Spain. But anyway, so Vvain Melter, he does some really cool stuff. I've sent him a lot of questions. How did you do that? Because he makes really cool stuff. The little bit I can do on Instagram, I got from him. So that's it. I hope that was fun. And I would appreciate it if you would put your favorite jazz socials in the comments below. And thanks a lot for checking in. I look really red, but I'm not red. Have a great day.